Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Entrepreneur Coach podcast. I am the Entrepreneur Coach, Bree Seeley. I'm very, very excited for today's guest. Deirdre has been someone that I've been getting to know a little bit more. I am a customer and big fan of her product. We're recording this on November 28th, about 3 weeks ago. Deirdre sent out an email and I read it and immediately was like, I got to have her on the podcast to talk about this. The email says, a couple of weeks ago, we had to make a very difficult decision. I had to deal with a big crossroads moment and decided to completely change our technical team. Part of the reason I wanted to have Deirdre on is because this idea of having to make big decisions for the future of our business is hard. There's no template. And I just really wanted to experience your process of how this unfolded and what you had to go through and what you had to tap into in order to trust that this decision was the right one. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Coach podcast. I'm the Entrepreneur Coach, Bree Seeley. My mission is to help female entrepreneurs like you have the audacity to believe in the inevitability of your success, then to gather the resources, tools, and knowledge you need to create your most aligned and profitable pathway to your vision of success. This podcast is all about providing you with a nitty-gritty behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. Forget the success porn and the rags to riches stories. Each episode will pull back the curtain and share the reality of entrepreneurship. I cannot wait to be part of your journey. Deirdre Tshien is the co-founder and CEO of Capsho, the fastest way to repurpose and market your expert content. Capsho is an AI-powered content marketer that helps entrepreneurs who podcast, vlog, and live stream create a draft of their episode title and description, social media captions, quotes, emails, blog posts, LinkedIn, and YouTube descriptions so that they can quickly amplify their message, grow their listeners, and build their movements. She is the creator of Content Dripping, author of Honey Trap Marketing, and host of the Grow My Podcast show. She is a 2023 honoree of the 100 Women to Know in America. Deirdre is a serial entrepreneur, having founded and led 7 businesses across 5 industries in the last 9 years, and has navigated the entire spectrum of experiences and emotions, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that comes with starting, running, closing, and exiting businesses. With her hands-on experience in successfully growing her businesses to 6 and 7 figures, she now helps expert entrepreneurs beat obscurity, amplify their message, and build their movements. Everyone, please help me virtually and digitally welcome Deirdre to the podcast. Hello.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Bree.
Well, the courage to make big decisions like this is something that I don't think gets talked about enough, or at least I haven't seen too many entrepreneurs out there sharing the behind the curtain look at how did you know it was time to make this decision and what went into making this decision. Start us out with that kind of first piece. How did you know that it was time to make a big change in your business?
Oh my gosh. Okay. A lot of it, I would say, comes down to, and this is like such a unsatisfactory answer, but it's like a lot of it is, I think, intuition and just a gut sense that things aren't as you would want them to be, whatever that looks like, that means to you, right? So for me, it was like they weren't as efficient. It was definitely more draining managing the type of team that we had than it should have been. I mean, you have a team for a reason, and it was just not alleviating time, mental headspace, any of those things. I think we just had to really ask ourselves some really difficult questions and go back to reframing some of the things that we hear about and learn a lot in this space about how you should be growing a business. There's just a lot of shoulds that was happening. And I think it was really being super intentional and interrogating. I've used the word interrogate so much with my co-founders. In the last however many weeks, it's like, okay, everything I want to interrogate. I want to interrogate everything that we're doing, all the decisions that we're making, the past decisions that we made. Why did we make them? So that we can learn and always constantly be better going forward. That's really the path that we went down. And I have to say that we're having this conversation, and I just want to put out there that I still don't have it all figured out. Let's just be honest, like none of us do, because we talk about our technical team. Even when I look back at when we were just in the very initial stages stages of getting Capsho built, we made an investment in a fractional CTO who was uber expensive. It was almost the equivalent of paying for a full-time person, but like not a CTO level. So it was a lot of money for us, especially being startups. When I look back at the decision when we made it, I was like, okay, this is a good decision to make because we don't have technical expertise in our team. We needed to bring someone in to do that. And the thing too is that by making a really, really scary, especially big financial decision like that, it forces you to level up. And I truly believe that. Now we've progressed from there. We then built our own in-house team, which was the decision that we made after that. And the decision that we made when I emailed out 3 weeks ago, what kind of precipitated that was that we're not even technical people. And we had to stand in and be a lot of that as well with that technical team. And I was like, there's going to be a better way to be doing this that is not draining us and also splitting our focus, because that's what I've really, really honed in on. How do we get so disciplined and hyper focused on the things that we need to focus on? Because we are a small team. And before I thought, because this is what we hear, especially in the SaaS world, hyper growth means growing a team really quickly. I've been reading things like 10x is easier than 2x and things like that. And it's like the who, not how, right? In my mind, I was like, okay, we need to recruit. And so we did. We grew a technical team to 5 people. We had brought on a growth marketer. We had brought on someone to lead our community. We were growing our team because I was like, this is what it takes, right? This is what it means to be quote unquote successful. It got to the point where, and literally I remember because it was like October 31st when we pretty much cut everyone, pretty much the whole team, because it's this counterintuitive thing where you think that by hiring someone, it's going to take a ton off your plate. And it does to an extent, but what it actually also does is it adds back to your plate because there's time that you have to put into managing them. And I'm not, by the way, against delegate. Like we still have people who work more on the admin side of things, which we need them. But there are some things that I think we have to look hard at and be like, is that what we want to be as a team, what we want to be focusing on? And it's actually cascaded into a bunch of different decisions that we make. Lena and I talk about community, like we've had to really interrogate again, our intentions around community and what that's going to look like, and growth marketing, things like that, where we're like, we don't think that by bringing someone in, that was actually going to do what we needed it to do. And so why? That's what it always came down to, like why? And the same with the technical team. Why are we spending the time when we shouldn't need to? Like we're not technical. We're in the software business, yes, but we're not technical founders. We needed technical leadership. So we had to just completely reframe how we look at all of that as well. So it was just across the board. It felt like we scorched in order to really come back to what is it that we need to be focusing on.
First off, I want to just recognize again, I think I said this at the beginning, how much courage it takes to do this. There's that old saying of, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And technically, it wasn't broken. It just wasn't working the way that you wanted it to work. To be able to look at something and say, well, it's working, but it's not optimum level working. And then having the courage to burn it to the ground and then rebuild. There's a quote in one of my notebooks that I jotted down in the last month that talked about how much fertilizer there is in ashes. But I think oftentimes we as founders don't allow ourselves to burn things to the ashes to then use it as fertilizer. But if we're not doing that, and sometimes it doesn't take a full burn, right? Sometimes it just takes a little deconstruction. But if we're not doing that, we're preventing ourselves from that next level of growth that we're truly looking for. Our minds are so fascinating. It's like, well, I already know this, right? It's like the devil I know, and I'd rather keep the devil I know than dive into having to rebuild a complete technical team or start from scratch or have to learn things that I didn't think I'd ever be learning as a business owner. When you were having the conversations with your co-founders, were all of you on the same page in this investigative process that you did? Were there things that came up that made you think that maybe this wasn't the best next move?
Where we started, I mean, we always start with the symptom, right? Like this is kind of how we're feeling. And I think we were all feeling the same way. Where I think I got comfort, because I know that I can also be a little bit reactive, and I'm a high D on the DISC profile, and I'm like all action oriented, and I make decisions pretty quickly. And that's why I use the word interrogate so much, because I'm like, is this just me? Like, can you just make sure, like interrogate me, like just really get to why am I making these decisions? And we had this really, really powerful conversation with each other around what do we even want out of this business, which sounds so foundational. Like we should have had this conversation before. And I think that we had, but it was more like implied, because again, and this is where I I said we had to debunk a lot of our own myths. Because for me, I was like, if we're a software business, this is how software businesses operate. They either go for funding or they basically have to show that they have this hyper growth and it's a hustle culture and it's all about the big payout at the end. It's all of that, right? That's like in my mind what I thought building a software business was going to be. And I was like, let's have this discussion about, is that actually the type of business that we want to be building? So we had a really, really honest conversation about that. And what it came down to was basically we want a business that, yes, is going to be successful, that at the end of the day is going to help a ton of people. But really through that, we want to also enjoy ourselves. We don't want to be part of the hustle culture. We don't want to have to deprive ourselves now for this elusive big payout that will likely never happen, because you hear about all of the percentage of software business that get to that point is like so low. And that's not to say that we won't, but you just don't know because you can't tell the future, right? And so we're like, well, what's the purpose of putting ourselves through that when we can build a really, really amazing business, amazing community with Capshovians like you, people who we want to truly help, and at the same time, like just live a life that we want to live.
That's something that so many of us do. And I will 100% throw my hat in the ring. I am absolutely guilty of this as well. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning and she referenced Danielle Laporte, who apparently at some point said, the journey needs to feel like the destination. What a lot of us do is we're so focused on the destination that we're like, well, I can sacrifice on the journey. I don't have to feel great today. I don't have to take care of myself. I can hustle. I can overwork. I can not feed myself, not work out, not meditate. I can sacrifice all the things about myself for this end destination. And the thing I've really been grappling with, I just started with a new coach and she's been encouraging me into the same thing, is like, why not have the journey feel as good as the destination? And very similarly to what you just said as well, we don't know if the destination is actually going to happen or not, right? We're going to put our all into it. It doesn't mean we're slacking off or not pulling our weight, but also I think about it too in the terms of the 9-to-5ers. You have a job that you hate for 40 years or 50 years just so you can get to retirement and feel good then. And it's like, but why not be at a place where we can enjoy all of it?
Yes, exactly. When we really got to the why we're in this and what we want out of it, it made those decisions, because then you can align on all of that. It just doesn't make sense for us to have the technical team that we do because that's not serving that purpose. It doesn't make sense for us to have employees that, by the way, there's super amazing people, which I say all this like it was really, really hard time, but looking back, it was like we had to make these tough decisions in order for us to have the now freedom that we need so that we can actually grow the business in the way that it needs to be grown. Like that's what it comes down to. That clarified so much, just going back to, okay, what is the business, the situation, the circumstance that we want to be in right now? To your point, like what is that destination right now that we want to be living through this journey? And once we kind of really aligned on that, it was just like, yep, it's hard, but we have to make these decisions and we have to make it happen. Honestly, since then, it's been a relief. Like I woke up the next morning. So we spoke to everyone on October 31st. And on the 1st of November, we woke up and I just felt like this weight was off my shoulder. It just felt so good. And now how we prioritize and the things that we focus on, we've become really, really hyper about that. Because I am one of those people who's like, I've got all these ideas and I'm a visionary. I've gotten better because it doesn't serve my team to do that. I've gotten better at really reining that in, sitting on it a little bit more, because the great thing about the team is we're all very action oriented. So it's like, okay, I have this idea. And then we just go ahead and we just implement the thing. And it's like, no, I'm going to hold back myself, just like sit on things, because if it was good and important enough, then I'll raise it again in a week's time or in 2 weeks' time. But that just means then that I'm not putting things on my team and diffusing their focus so that they're not effective in what it is that they should be doing. So it's just things like that, that once we've made that decision and the why, it's become a lot easier to just even monitor my own behaviors.
Pardon the interruption as we take a brief break before bringing you back to our episode. Hey entrepreneur, Bree Seeley here. I have a really special free event coming up that I want you to know about. This event is called Upgrade Your Ambition. It is a 5-day journey to help you break free from overworking and underliving as an entrepreneur so that you can actually enjoy the life that you've built for yourself. To help you truly understand how to be ambitious without letting it fully consume you. We are not about burning out in our businesses this year. There is another option. question, you can learn to do it differently. And you are going to do so by attending the Upgrade Your Ambition free 5-day event, March 4th through the 8th. You can register for free by visiting breesealy.com/summit. And if you'd like, there is actually an upgrade available as well. It's $97, and what it comes with is the ability to actually attend all 10 speaker sessions live so that you can ask your questions directly to each speaker. And I'll actually be hosting live coaching sessions with all of the VIPs in a group format every day throughout the summit. You also get extra VIP gifts and the ability to rewatch any and all of the interviews and the coaching sessions as you wish. So make sure to visit breesealy.com/summit and upgrade your tickets so that you get support from all 10 of the speakers and me every single day for a week. We cannot wait to see you and hang out with you throughout the entire summit, March 4th through the 8th. breesealy.com/summit. I will see you soon. And now back to our episode. In the last 3 weeks, then, has that relief feeling stayed? Have you been enjoying the journey more? I love looking for proof. And so when you said that you woke up the next morning and felt relieved, I'm like, proof. I'm always trying to prove to myself that what I'm doing is working. And sometimes those feelings, or like you said earlier, that intuition, the proof. And that's exactly what we were just saying. We have to wake up and feel that way every day if we want to get to that destination that we're creating.
Yes, 100%. Since then, everything has felt easier. And let's look back to the 10x is easier than 2x theories, because have you finished reading the book?
I'm 3/4 of the way through. Okay. I've been reading it very slowly because I can consume. There are these young adult books that I've been reading, and I can read a 700-page book in under 72 hours. I can just,
I know exactly. Yes, I'm the same.
With this book, I knew that I wanted to apply it and that I was very serious about it. And so I've been really slowly reading, implementing, reading, implementing. I'm 3/4 of the way through.
Awesome. So I do believe in the who, not how is one of the big pillars of that book. And there's also a separate book that they wrote on that topic. When you hear it very on the surface level and apply it, it's like, oh yes, okay, well, it makes sense. You delegate the things and then you find someone else to do it. Or if I don't have the experience or the capability or even the will to do the thing, then okay, just hire, find the who. And that's what we followed. We were just blindly like, yes, okay, who, not how, it's not us. And as I said before, it created way more complexity in the business than I thought it would. And the thing is that we had to go through it. There was no other way. Even here talking about this, I 100% understand that anyone listening to this, you still have to go through it. Unfortunately, you can't listen to me and be like, oh, well, I'll just do what Deirdre did, because we're all different as well. We're all different businesses. We're all in it for different reasons. Everything is so different. But the way that I think about who, not how now, again, in interrogating what it is that we needed and why, it was probably not enough to just be like, oh, okay, well, we don't like doing this, for example, or we don't have the time to do this, so we'll just get someone in to do it. This is why I say it's different for different people, because I don't think I'm a control freak by way of needing to get into the detail, but I'm a control freak by way of needing to have visibility of results, input and output in a way, just visibility, right? For me, it was really, really tough to have that kind of visibility in certain situations. And so what I had to look at was, when we say that we don't have capacity in the team, if it's important enough, we will create that capacity. I think that's with everything, right? If anything is important enough, you will do everything in your power to make that thing happen. For example, let me talk about even from a content marketing perspective, every second day, and I laugh about this with Bonner, she's our CEO, so she implements a lot of the stuff, but I'm always like, oh man, we should get onto YouTube. Literally every second day, I'm like, we've got to try YouTube. We've got to try YouTube. Now I was like, if it was important enough, we would prioritize that and really go in on it. Maybe not having to be the experts in it, but at least finding someone who can be the implementation expert with us. The who, not how, for me has really become about, how do we find the implementation advisors? So we have a mutual friend, Katie Brinkley, and we've actually just put Katie on because we know that we want to get better at our social media presence. We've been there and doing some things, but we don't really have a strategy and we don't really have the implementation chops around it, but she does. So we're like, okay, cool. Let's work with someone who we know can help us but we're still learning through that process. So we're not completely outsourcing it in terms of like, hey, here, Katie, can you just manage but you consult with us to be like, okay, well, this is what you want to be doing and this is why. And this is how you want to be thinking about. And that's really, really valuable because then we're actually learning, we're growing, but we're actually also creating the space to prioritize the thing that we want to. And at some point when that's kind of in train and happening, and maybe we will bring someone in the team to then take that on, then it's like, okay, well, is YouTube the thing now that is going to be important enough for us to work with an implementation advisor? That's what I always call them now, an implementation advisor, to actually go, okay, well, this is exactly what you need to do. This is how you do it. And they'll consult with us. For me, that's become the who versus let's just like try to hoover up people, join our team and assume that they'll get the things done when they might not.
Very similar. I don't necessarily want to call it a mistake, but I definitely hired too early for a position that was too big. I think it was for similar reasons as you, like, oh, well, I've written my book now. I should have full-time-ish person behind me to help me with these things. And I think she made it 2 months. And then I very similarly, unfortunately, one day, I wasn't even planning to say it. And it was just like the universe moved through me and said it for me and was like, I don't think this is going to work anymore. I think I had to learn that lesson too, and then really determine what does an effective team look like for me.
Exactly.
Questions like that, whether it's what does an effective team look like for me? What does effective marketing look like for me? I tell everyone, do not do a podcast. I mean, we love podcasts, obviously, and there's so much work. So the questions here are really important, and filtering it through the lens for the listener of what does that look like for me? I love this idea of having an implementation advisor who's kind of telling you best practices, helping you learn that, and then you can build a team around that if you decide to do that. That for me feels like much more sustainable growth. And I think that some of these narratives out there about, like you said earlier, you're in tech, you just have to grow your team fast. And it's like, okay, but are we growing a team just for the sake of growing a team? Or are we growing a team because it fits within the bigger picture ecosystem of the strategy that we're putting in place?
Yes, 100%. You're such a great, like I just talked and you just brought so much beauty to that. The great thing about having gone through it, and I wish I could tell people the silver bullet to not have to go through the things, but unfortunately you do have to go through it. But you come out of it with so much more clarity and so much more vigor, I think, in terms of doing. We actually released a podcast episode, I think it was last week, where I came up with the term shelve the shoulds, because I did not realize how many shoulds was driving so many of my decisions. And one of those was like, again, community, right? Everyone's like, got to have a community. So many software products have communities. And hey, by the way, if you have a group on Facebook, like that's the thing that gets ranked in. Like, anyway, there's all of these things that you just hear. And so I'm like, oh, I must go have a community. But what does community even mean? Like, I didn't even stop to ask myself that. Like, what does it mean? To me, it meant, well, you have to have some tool. So we had Heartbeat that would house the community. And then it was like, put them all in there. And that's the community, right? Like, that's the thing. And so that's why we hired someone to manage that community and to really activate it. And when we were like, again, in that decision making of like, why do we even have this community? What does community mean to us? So again, it was like interrogation. What does community mean for us? Not to anyone else, but to us. What we came down to was its connection and access. And that wasn't by us just coming up with, we actually spoke to people to be like, hey, what are you looking for out of the community? And it was so funny because, again, they default to the usual things like, oh yeah, I guess a community. I guess I'd be looking for somewhere where I can maybe talk to, and I was like, but you have that now and you're not using it. So is that really actually what you want? And they're like, oh no, actually, probably not. I just want to know I'm part of something, whatever that looked like, something bigger, whether that's the Capsho brand, that's the things that we stand for, the messages that we talk about on the podcast, on your emails, and it's just all of this other stuff. And so even through that decision, the way that we're going to look at community for Capsho is going to be completely different. It's not going to be about we're just going to try to beat the Facebook algorithm, or we're just going to, no, because we want to be really mindful of people's time and we want to be really intentional about the value that we can provide. So that's not in what we have now. It's made us just rethink a whole bunch of things, which is actually freeing. It's so freeing to be able to untangle yourself from the shoulds. You feel like piece by piece, I'm getting out of the webs. I'm like the fly that's stuck in the should web. And I'm like limb by limb, I'm getting unstuck, because it's actually really freeing to be like, we can make this whatever we need it to be and whatever makes sense for our people. And that in itself is where so much of the relief comes from, I think.
First Reiki healer that I ever went to, and I think it was back in 2008 or 2009, looked at me because I had a really bad case of the shoulds when I met her. And she looked at me, and it was the first time I'd ever heard this. Why are you shoulding all over yourself? And I was like, oh my God, that obviously clearly doesn't sound like shoulding.
Yeah.
And it was like such a mindset shift for me, where I was like, I'm forcing myself to do these things that I don't even know if they're things I want to do in the first place, or if they even matter to me. And it's up to each of us to really, truly, like you've said, investigate those things and really determine what works for me. Two things quick, and then I know we have to wrap. Unfortunately, I want to keep talking to you. First off, if anyone is feeling like you need to go through this process in your business, I actually didn't even realize this is kind of where we were going, but I actually just put out a free mini course that's called The Reset. And it's kind of going to help you do some of these things, is really look at what's working in my business and what's not working. What do I need to get rid of? What needs to stay? What even has me believing that this is what my business needs to look like in the first place? And then how do I redesign things to know that I can move forward in the way that I want to? So if anyone wants to access that, it's breesealy.com/reset. I also wanted to say too, so I'm going to hold up something. If you're watching the YouTube, you'll see it. If you're listening, unfortunately, you won't. But I got this great 1-year package in the mail from Capsho. And I think that this really represents kind of what you just said. Is like, for me, I don't need another online platform. I'm in a bunch of them for a bunch of different tech products. Ask me the last time I logged into any of them. Ask me how to log into any of them, because I'm pretty sure I don't even know how to log into the majority of them. But I got this coaster and stickers and a nice letter, and I think something else in the mail from Capsho for their 1-year anniversary. And this silly coaster sits on my desk with me all day, every day. I do feel like I'm part of the Capsho community, even without seeing you all and talking to you all every day. I know too, there's been a few times that I've had an issue or had a hiccup, and I email you guys and you get back to me immediately. And for me, that's what's important about being part of a community, is knowing that I'm a valued member, even if we only see each other in person once a year at Capsho Live or whatever that looks like. But it's interesting how this quote unquote silly little coaster did more for you guys building community within me than having the should community platform that we're all told that we need to have in order to have community online. Again, more proof that you guys following your intuition, giving yourselves permission to do it your way, it's working and it's really beautiful. And so I just want to say thank you for sharing your process with us today and just diving into all of the things that we do to ourselves to force ourselves to fit into molds, and having the courage to undo that and be ourselves and meet our core values and do what we need to do to feel good in our businesses so that we can then go out and make an impact.
Oh, I appreciate you, Bree. Thank you. I hope that this was helpful. I have a structured brain, but I couldn't put this into a structure because I was like, unfortunately, you just have to go through it, which is so unsatisfactory. But just starting with, if I would boil it down, the why you're doing anything really. And then, as you said, having the courage to really interrogate and then create the actions and show the shoulds. Like for me, that's actually been in the last, however many weeks, it's been transformative for me. And so I'm really glad to have had this conversation with you.
Love it. Thank you for coming on. Seriously, I so appreciate it. Tell everyone where they can find you, and if they're a podcaster, where they can get access to Capsho. And quick little caveat, I use Capsho for every single podcast episode that I put out. So if you read the title to this podcast, the description for this podcast, if you're on YouTube, the description there, if you saw any of our social media posts, the emails, the blogs, literally all of that I created because of Capsho. And I could tell you, I don't think I'd still have a podcast today if I had to manually do all of this. So if you're a podcaster, first off, tell us where we can find you, and then tell us where podcasters can access Capsho.
Yeah. So I am mainly on Facebook and LinkedIn. So Deirdre Tshien, DeirdreTshien. It's not the simplest name, but you can definitely connect with me. Let me know that you heard me on Bree's podcast. I'd love to connect. As Bree said, if you're a podcaster or really you create long form audio video content, so you might be a YouTuber or a live streamer, then you can definitely try Capsho out for free. As Bree mentioned, Capsho, it's an AI-powered software and it creates all of your repurposed content marketing assets, titles, descriptions, social media posts, emails, blog posts, LinkedIn articles, sound bites, quotes, like it does a ton of stuff. And if you want to check that out, try it for free, then head over to capsho.com.
Love it. Thank you so much. Listeners, if this resonated with you, please share it with a fellow entrepreneur, maybe one that's having a hard time making a decision or feeling like their business is a little arduous and they're ready for that relief that Deirdre talked about. So thank you all for listening. I will see you again next week. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Entrepreneur Coach podcast. I hope you gained valuable wisdom from this episode and have at least one thing you can act on today. As I always say, listening to this episode will not change your life. What you do afterwards will. Please be sure to leave a rating and a review of the show, and don't forget to share this episode with a friend or colleague who could use it. Last but not least, please have the audacity to believe in the inevitability of your success today. You deserve it.